At 3:47 a.m. local time, the Persian Gulf was silent. 32 knots of wind from the Northwest Sea, State 3. Visibility unrestricted. Inside the Combat Information Center of USS Carl Vinson, the night watch monitored a radar picture that had been clean for 6 consecutive hours. No unidentified contacts. No anomalous emissions. The strike group was transiting southeast through the Central Gulf, 140 nautical miles from the Iranian coastline, maintaining standard defensive posture. At 3:48, the Spy-6 radar registered the first return, then the second, then the fifth, then the 12th. Within 9 seconds, the radar picture changed from empty ocean to 12 low-altitude contacts emerging simultaneously from the Iranian coastline, spread across a 74 kilometers front, all heading directly toward the Carl Vinson at speeds between 185 and 220 kilometers per hour. 12 Shahed 136 loitering munitions, 12 independent guidance systems, 12 warheads of approximately 40 kilograms each, launched from at least 3 separate coastal positions along the Bushehr and Khuzestan provinces in a coordinated release timed to arrive at the strike group within the same 90-second window. 3 weeks earlier, Iran had attempted a drone saturation against the USS Bataan amphibious group using 6 Shaheds launched from a single position. The Bataan's escort destroyer had detected them at 110 kilometers and engaged with SM-2 interceptors at 65 kilometers. All 6 were destroyed before reaching 40 kilometers. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. Iran learned 3 things from that failure. First, 6 drones were not enough to overwhelm a single Aegis destroyers. Engagement sequencing. Second, launching from a single point allowed the defensive system to calculate a single threat axis and concentrate resources. Third, high-altitude approach profiles made detection simple and interception routine. The 12 Shaheds now approaching the Carl Vinson addressed all 3 problems simultaneously. To understand why 12 drones from 3 separate launch positions flying at extremely low altitude created a fundamentally different defensive problem than 6 drones from one position at medium altitude, one must understand how an Aegis combat system prioritizes simultaneous targets. The Aegis system can track hundreds of contacts simultaneously, but tracking is not engagement. Engagement requires the assignment of a fire control channel to a specific target, the calculation of an intercept solution, the launch of a missile, and the guidance of that missile to impact. Each SM-2 or ESSM interceptor requires dedicated fire control attention for the duration of its flight. A single Aegis destroyer can engage between 16 and 20 simultaneous targets, depending on configuration. But the Carl Vinson's defensive screen consisted of 2 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers and 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser. Theoretical simultaneous engagement capacity across the screen, approximately 50 targets. 12 drones should have been manageable. The problem was not capacity. The problem was geometry. 12 targets arriving from 3 separate coastal positions meant 3 separate threat axes converging on the strike group. The escorts positioned ahead and to the flanks of the carrier could not simultaneously cover all 3 axes without repositioning. The drones flying at altitudes between 15 and 30 meters above the water reduced radar detection range from the standard 110 kilometers to approximately 38 kilometers against these specific targets. At 200 kilometers per hour, 38 kilometers of detection range meant the defensive system had approximately 11 minutes and 24 seconds from first detection to impact. For SM-2 engagement, that was sufficient, but 11 minutes to engage 12 targets from 3 directions, with limited fire control channels per axis created a sequencing pressure that Iran had calculated precisely. At 3 hours 48 minutes and 9 seconds, the tactical action officer aboard USS Carl Vinson declared Condition 1. The strike group's defensive network activated across all platforms simultaneously. At 3:49, the Aegis systems aboard destroyers USS Higgins and USS O'Kane began assigning fire control solutions, 4 drones approaching from the northeast, 4 from the east, 4 from the southeast. Each destroyer took primary responsibility for one axis. The cruiser USS Lake Champlain held reserve coverage across all three. At 3:52, USS Higgins launched the first SM-2 against the leading drone on the northeast axis. Distance to Carl Vinson, 29 kilometers. The SM-2 tracked the Shahed at 15 meters altitude, correcting for sea clutter interference. The interceptor detonated at 3 hours 52 minutes and 44 seconds, destroying the first drone 26.4 kilometers from the carrier. Cost of that engagement? One SM-2 Block IIIB interceptor, valued at approximately $2.1 million. To destroy a drone valued at approximately $20,000. At 3:53, Higgins engaged the second and third drones on the northeast axis simultaneously. Both SM-2s tracked successfully. Second drone destroyed at 24.1 kilometers. Third drone destroyed at 22.8 kilometers. The fourth drone on the northeast axis was engaged at 3 hours 54 minutes and 12 seconds and destroyed at 19.7 kilometers. Northeast axis cleared, 4 SM-2 missiles expended. Total elapsed time, 2 minutes and 12 seconds. On the eastern axis, USS O'Kane engaged its 4 assigned targets beginning at 3 hours 53 minutes and 30 seconds. The first drone destroyed at 23.9 kilometers from Carl Vinson. Second at 21.2 kilometers. Third at 20.1 kilometers. The fourth drone on the eastern axis executed a pre-programmed altitude drop at 3 hours 55 minutes and 1 second, descending from 18 meters to 6 meters above the waterline. At that altitude, the SM-2's terminal guidance struggled with sea surface returns. The missile detonated 14 meters from the drone. Fragmentation damaged the Shahed's left wing surface but did not destroy it. The drone continued flying at 6 meters altitude, now at 14.3 kilometers from Carl Vinson, trailing debris but maintaining course at 195 kilometers per hour. O'Kane launched a second SM-2 against the damaged drone at 3 hours 55 minutes and 38 seconds. This interceptor acquired the target cleanly and detonated at 3 hours 56 minutes and 2 seconds, destroying the fourth eastern drone at 11.8 kilometers from the carrier. 5 SM-2 missiles expended for 4 targets on the eastern axis. The southeast axis was the problem. The 4 drones approaching from the southeast had been detected 3.4 seconds later than the other 2 groups because their launch position was partially masked by Karg Island's radar shadow during the initial detection sweep. Those 3.4 seconds meant the fire control solutions on the southeast axis were assigned last. Lake Champlain, holding reserve coverage, began engagement at 3 hours 54 minutes and 40 seconds. First drone on the southeast axis, destroyed at 18.4 kilometers. Second, destroyed at 16.1 kilometers. The third executed the same altitude drop maneuver to 5 meters above sea level at 3 hours 56 minutes and 12 seconds. Distance, 12.7 kilometers from Carl Vinson. Lake Champlain's ESSM interceptor lost track at 3 hours 56 minutes and 29 seconds due to multipath interference at that extreme low altitude. The missile self-destructed. The third drone continued inbound. Distance to Carl Vinson, 9.3 kilometers. The fourth drone on the southeast axis, the last of the 12, maintained 8 meters altitude and was now 10.1 kilometers from the carrier, following 1.2 kilometers behind the third. 2 drones, both below 8 meters, both inside 10 kilometers, both heading directly for the Carl Vinson. At 3 hours 56 minutes and 44 seconds, the close-in defensive layer activated. USS Higgins, having cleared its northeast axis, repositioned its fire control to support the southeast sector. An ESSM was launched at 3 hours 56 minutes and 51 seconds against the close-in of the 2 remaining drones, now at 7.4 kilometers. The ESSM, designed for exactly this engagement envelope, tracked the target and detonated at 3 hours 57 minutes and 8 seconds, destroying the third southeast drone at 4.1 kilometers from Carl Vinson. The fourth and final drone was now 5.8 kilometers from the carrier, at 195 kilometers per hour. That represented 107 seconds to impact. At 3 hours 57 minutes and 12 seconds, Carl Vinson's own Phalanx CIWS acquired the final target. The Block 1 Byte Systems radar locked the incoming drone at 5.6 kilometers. The system tracked for 4.2 seconds, confirming trajectory, confirming speed, confirming classification. At 3 hours 57 minutes and 16 seconds, the Phalanx fired. The 20mm rotary cannon sent 540 rounds downrange in a 1-second burst at 4,500 rounds per minute. The tungsten penetrators formed a dense cone of metal in the drone's flight path. The Shahed 136 flew directly into the stream at 3 hours 57 minutes and 19 seconds. The drone disintegrated at 3.2 kilometers from the flight deck of USS Carl Vinson. Fragments scattered across 200 meters of ocean surface. The 40 kilograms warhead detonated on water impact, producing a flash visible from the carrier's port observation gallery. No damage to Carl Vinson, no damage to any escort vessel, no casualties. At 3:58, the strike group transmitted the engagement report to 5th Fleet Command. 12 hostile UAV contacts neutralized. Total engagement time, 9 minutes and 51 seconds from first detection to last kill. Munitions expended, 9 SM-2 Block I IIB interceptors, 2 ESSM, 1 Phalanx engagement burst. Closest approach, 3.2 kilometers, no damage to any unit. The arithmetic of the engagement told the story the tactical summary did not. 9 SM-2 missiles at $2.1 million each, $18.9 million. 2 ESSM at $1.8 million each, $3.6 million. Total defensive expenditure, approximately $23.1 million to destroy 12 drones, collectively valued at approximately $240,000. Cost ratio, 96-1 in Iran's favor. The Carl Vinson's escort destroyers carried a combined magazine of approximately 180 missile cells. 11 interceptors had been expended against 12 slow, cheap, expendable drones. If Iran launched 120 Shaheds in a single coordinated wave, a quantity within its documented production capacity, the strike group would exhaust its entire missile inventory before the last drone was destroyed. The Carl Vinson maintained its transit speed. Flight operations resumed at 4:15. The strike group continued southeast without deviation. This story is not about 12 Shaheds or 9 SM-2 interceptors. It is about the arithmetic of attrition. When the cost of defense exceeds the cost of attack by a factor of 96, the attacker does not need to hit the target. The attacker needs only to force the defender to spend. Every interception is a tactical success and an economic defeat. Every drone destroyed is one fewer missile available for the next wave, and Iran knows exactly how many cells remain in those magazines. The war of saturation is not measured in damage inflicted. It is measured in inventories depleted. Do you think the Carl Vinson's commander should have reserved interceptor missiles for a potential follow-up strike and allowed some drones to be engaged only by Phalanx at close range? Or was expending long-range missiles against every target regardless of cost the correct decision when a carrier's flight deck is at stake? Leave your analysis in the comments, because in modern naval warfare, the most dangerous weapon is not the one that hits. It is the one that makes you spend what you cannot replace.